Hello and welcome to the CMIP Debate Theatre here at NAB 2022. We have a wonderful panel today where we're going to look at innovation and future trends in the TV industry with a truly international panel. We have multiple countries and levels of expertise represented on the stage, and I'd like George
Or Jorge.
or Jorge,
Whichever you prefer.
which either we prefer, to kick off with a slight introduction to yourself.
So
and your
my name
company.
is Jorge Alberto Fiterre. I'm a partner at Condista and principal at Condista Labs. We are a content distributor. We distribute Spanish language, television, and international programming all throughout the Americas to pay television operators.
And Francesco.
Hello everybody, Francesco Moretti from Fincons Group. We are an IT and consulting company based in Europe and in US, and we work a lot for the broadcast industry.
And Yanis.
Hello everyone, I'm Yannis Andreopoulos. I'm the CTO of iSize. iSize is an AI technology provider. We build AI components that we then provide to our partners for services that they deploy in video distribution.
And Dave.
I'm Dave Ward. I'm the CEO of Packet Fabric. We're a network as a service company providing software-defined networking and an agile cloud core and secure private internet.
And Pietro.
Peter Young, but call me PJ, it's going to be a lot easier. CTO of TO Technologies, and we're mostly known for TO Player or a video playback product, but we also have a lot of things going on around low latency distribution. So let's get started.
Perfect. So I have to say, and it sounds false, but it's true, this is actually my favorite panel because I'm a geek. I am proud to be a techno geek because innovation, I believe, is the lifeblood of our industry. And this panel is great because there's so many people with different patents and technologies and interests. So I'm going to ask each one of you, starting with Jorge, what trend or innovation really excites you that you see as being an important movement for our industry over the next 3 to 5 years?
So I think there's three. There's two that really excite me and one that might be a little bit controversial based on your previous panelists. So the first one is going to be the rebundling and the reaggregation. I don't think any platforms out there are doing it right. I think the consumer is confused. They're fatigued. They want a single touch point to manage all their subscriptions and all their entertainment options. And I think Google Chromecast in their new Google TV release was starting to, edge in that direction. There's a lot of walled gardens and a lot of, different interests that might prevent that kind of integration. But I think that's going to be a theme that at some point, strange bedfellows are going to start to work together just to drive their businesses. That's going to be the first one. The second one is going to be hyper-personalization. I think at some point, we're going to drill down further beyond just simple regionalization, and we're going to be able to provide dynamic playlists just based on viewer preference and viewer data.
Those are two good ones.
Yeah.
Don't take all of them. You can't have all of the predictions.
And then the last one, and there's smarter people in the room thinking about this, is the metaverse. I don't know how it's going to be leveraged, but it's not going to go away. And I think it'll be something that we'll need to contend with, or it's going to have a commercial use at some point in the future, at least in television.
We did have a rule that said we couldn't talk about the metaverse or 3D. Just throwing it out there. But Francesco.
Thanks. It's definitely controversial, the last one. But as an IT provider, we definitely have an eye on all the innovation coming into the industry to, let's say, prepare and let them use by our customers in the broadcast industry. And definitely the hyper-personalization is something that is coming up in the recent past and is definitely paving the road for the futures. And in particular, what we are observing and what we are actually actioning and contributing is bringing in the hyper-personalization also for the broadcast industry, leveraging the convergence of broadcast and broadcast. So this is happening in Europe since quite a few years now, and we see lots of interest and lots of movement in US. Thanks to the ATSC rollout and adoption, which will become at scale soon. And there you can combine AI, you can combine a lot of different partners and players to really transform the TV consumption and the TV services to the unique consumer.
Yanis.
Right. So for us, we see video as being very pervasive, interactive media, telepresence, making sure you can reach anywhere, anyone, visually and so on. And there's an open question in that problem: will conventional video coding technologies do the job with the latency, with the bitrate, with the bandwidth that's going to be available in 5G, in 6G, and so on? Or should they be replaced completely with an AI kind of ecosystem of encoding and distribution, right? And it's an open question. We believe that the answer would be a hybrid solution of AI enhancement on top of existing codec fabrics. So, and they would help in latency, in quality, in enhancement. And we'll monitor activities, we work with our partners, and it's a question we're really passionate about.
So it's awesome. So I'm going to take a different view on this, and a lot of the three themes I'm going to talk about are ones that are talked about at this show quite a bit. They've been a long time coming, but nonetheless, they're right about here, and that's virtual studios, virtual production, and studio as a service. I think those are three great topics, and my colleagues have talked about different pieces that are necessary to get there, but just the innovation required to fundamentally transform the industry in those three directions, I think is a huge trend that's coming right at us.
Perfect.
Yep. And that's probably a trend driven by COVID as well. So there's definitely a need. But what I actually think is that we're going to see a lot of very different innovations for the reason that there are, some people won't like it, but there are too many streaming services. You can't watch all of them. And the way for them to differentiate will be through innovation. And one of the things that I truly believe in is actually in providing a newer user experience through interactivity and through all kinds of other things. And things like low latency and AI and personalization, it'll come back in all of them, but it's the interactivity where I think we need to innovate as an industry to make sure that, well, a lot more brands can stay alive and can stay in existence.
As you can see, a huge diversity in areas of interest. Let's delve into those a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and this notion of automation. It's been a topic outside of our industry, and we've seen it now move into our industry. In the view of the panel, and whoever wants to take it, feel free to, where are we when it comes to AI and machine learning? Start, middle, end. Are there any applications or practical implementations that we can see in the market delivering a benefit? Whoever wants that hot potato is more than welcome. Oh,
Want me to break the ice?
You break the ice,
So
Francesco.
of course, as I said on the next Gen TV, how it's called, it's definitely very interesting to implement AI and machine learning tool to recognize automatically VIPs acting on a movie, or objects or brands present in there, and to automatically extract metadata that can be usable from the broadcasters to further personalize the service that it is offered. And this can actually also be used during live shows to get feedback and maybe adjust the tone and the level of how the show is going.
Are we seeing any, when you look at the industry, are there any pioneers that we would look to and say, wow, these guys are really delivering something different or new? Are there any either customers or others in the industry that you look to and say they're innovators? Dave, what's your view?
So bridging from the last question to this one thing I want to call out just from AI and ML, and I realize that there's a lot of discussion around how to create content with it in pieces like this, but when I walk the show floor, there's a ton of AI and ML just around the IT and the way to automatically create those workflows. And I think that can't be overlooked because it is so challenging in such a complex environment. And that level of automation not only is what we specialize in, but also what clearly a lot of this industry is specializing in. As we step forward towards some of the key innovators, well, back on the three themes that I mentioned, whether you're in this hall, the West Hall, or you're going to others, there are now sub-segments of the industry that are solely focusing on trying to be able to create virtualized production and the tooling around that, the workflows around that. And what's really interesting, PJ, off to your point, there's no one company that's leading it all. There are pieces that are coming together with their services, and so we'll see in this industry, like many other industries, an aggregation. So who are some of the leaders? Well, the party tonight is held by a company called Vue, who is one of these studio as a service type companies who is in the middle of trying to create these virtualized production environments. That can't be overlooked. This is their big coming out party. You know, I'm not associated with that company, but nonetheless, you can't deny that such a big coming out here at NAB. They're clearly trying to push that. Down at the other end of the hall, Amazon is trying to push that. Google's trying to push that. So major players in the industry have evolved from talking about their clouds being available for large and massive encoding jobs, or as the case might be, and now turning themselves into media workflow specialists and really trying to pull the entire industry, in their direction. Is there room for other players? I absolutely think so, but nonetheless, there is a big pull, by large cloud providers that is undeniable.
Okay, I'm going to ask Yanis, and I'll go to you after Peter. Yanis, what's your view?
Yeah, I agree, and I think what's interesting is in this kind of new content creation and streaming and bundling and so on, you also get a lot of exciting hybrid solutions that mix, for example, gaming with social and low latency with VOD and so on and so forth. And the question is then, the notion of traditional broadcast and traditional content disappears, right? Because you have some components that are interactive, like playing a game, and something like watching a player play a game, and so on and so forth. And it creates a massive amount of opportunities, but also a massive amount of pains to handle all these formats and so on. Especially Theo will comment on that now, I guess, PJ.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a pain, but when I actually think about AI, it's, for me, today they're all point solutions, but they're a lot broader than just setting up the workflows, than doing encoding or anything else. I mean, AI is, if you ask some people, it's the holy grail and it will solve all of the problems. But first, it will help solve us some very specific problems. And you see a lot of players who are very good at one thing: optimizing encoding, optimizing personalization, ad insertion, workflow stuff. It'll take a very long time, I think. We will not have like the one AI company that solves all of the problems very quickly. So I actually think that we're going to see a lot of different innovators, and that's good.
I mean, I come from the IT side of house, so I see a lot of networking companies that are currently leveraging AI and ML just to manage their networks and run triage before problems are reported. So I tend to agree. I think there are certain industries that are far beyond what media and entertainment is, but I think it's going to take a matter of time, and I think there's going to be several companies, and whether that gets lumped into a standard 5-10 years down the road remains to be seen. It can be difficult getting these folks to work together, but I think it'll be a matter of time before, because the way that AI and ML works, you need data, you need time, you need runway in order to start feeding the models. So at some point, media and entertainment is going to catch up to where, at least in my mind, network operators to manage their networks are today.
So I certainly hope we don't have to wait for standards bodies to tell us how to do AI. And I know, Jorge, that's not what you meant. At the intersection of how either data needs to be able to be communicated or results need to be communicated, that's a fantastic place. But the industry can't go as fast as the standards bodies. It's so far outpacing it, PJ, as you were mentioning. The challenge is the media and entertainment industry has been a patchwork quilt of very small players doing a very niche-y job, and how they can communicate and actually form a solution towards creating content, or to be able to bring together different art departments together through the entire workflow becomes critical for the industry to move forward more quickly than it does today.
All of you work with customers in the US, in Europe, Latin America. When you have those conversations about innovation, I'll ask you, Francesco, are there themes that your customers are saying to you, we want to talk about, maybe not today, but one of our things that we're interested in is X or Y? Are there any themes that the customers are really driving to you rather than the industry promoting? We see that a lot. The industry, this will be the next big thing. The customers are like, well, thank you for telling us that, but we're interested in this. Where do you see the customer interest at the moment?
So let me bring to this conversation the European flavor, and in particular, as United Europe is, fostering this level of conversation with customers, they schedule frame programs to, fund innovation. So we participate with many consortium, including universities, research centers, and users, so customers, across a variety of themes and topics. And for example, we are now making a POC using blockchain to automatically exchange rights, so from producers to consumers. But on top of this example, one of the trends we are definitely observing is, again, bridging this digital OTT with the linear. And so the trend there is, it's not new, but it's definitely insisting, is the BVOD, so the broadcaster VOD. So the fact that you can definitely leverage your on-demand content on the main screen, on the bigger screen, and you can then engage the audience to invite them to consume more, so to drive that to the transaction VOD, and definitely use the advertising element to that then, thanks to all the data that you are able to collect upon consent, of course. And in Europe there's the GDPR, so you have to have a consent. But then the way is to really propose to audience something more compelling, so that to use that, they definitely give the consent, because it's a win-win. So it definitely lands into a agreed way of new consumption of the television.
I'm always very interested at an event like NAB. We often talk about technology, but I'm always fascinated by the shifting business models. I mean, the rise of AVOD, the rise of FAST, the change in these sort of hybrid subscription, freemium models. I mean, Dave, do you see any radical things emerging around the business of television and content over the next few years?
So from my side, being network as a service provider, it's 100% getting to the point where I'm only paying for what I'm using. So there are no big shrink-wrapped solutions that enable innovation for multiple players. They're usually a lock in some kind of silo. And so whatever the case might be, the business trend is I need an ecosystem of partners to come together, and I need to be able to have the new innovators come into that ecosystem and be embraced by the ecosystem versus rejected or any turf wars. But in particular, I need overall the business model of I only want to pay for what I consume, no matter what the different blocks of technology are that are brought into it. And I need to be able to make sure that it's metered, that it's understood exactly how much you're using, so I know exactly what I'm paying for. And if that can be delivered together, it's a radical different business environment when you're immediately going into an legacy media and entertainment and going into an alternative of that where the business model has to be that we're working together.
PJ, I know I saw you nodding there thoughtfully.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, if I look at how we work, we just focus on video player and on distribution side, but there are so many different components in a client app. There are analytics, DRM, there is server-side ad insertion beaconing, there's client-side ad insertion, there's watermarking, there's all kinds of different things. And it's then coming from encoders and packagers, and luckily it all works together rather well because there's standards or there's SDKs and all that kind of stuff that you can integrate. But there's a lot more that will need to happen in the future, because it's, as it's being mentioned here, there's a lot new, often proprietary techniques being developed, and we need to be able as an industry to bring all of that together. And it's on the client side, but it's just as well on the packaging and coding and all the other sides. It's
interesting. I was a broadcaster, then I was a journalist in the telecoms industry, then came back to broadcast. And in the telecoms industry, things like Open RAN have expanded out the ecosystem of suppliers. Yeah. I'll ask you, Yanis, is a similar thing happening in broadcasting, where before you could get your stack from maybe 1 or 3 or 5 vendors, where today the stack just looks, it's like not a stack, it's more like a tower of Jenga.
It's a jungle more than a stack. So on that note, and on your first question about what we hear from our customers, I'll merge them together. the three things we get is the notion of a screen is disappearing. So from the mobile to wearables to conventional, watching, right? Especially the younger people, they're on the move. They can watch things on the bicycle, on the car, or whatever, right? So that is a challenge because quality and content delivery depends a lot on the viewing experience, for one. The second is AI technologies in what we work on always face challenges of non-standard interfaces for deployment. So for example, you can write an AI model and then deploy it in TensorFlow Lite, in PyTorch, in OpenVINO, and there's like many things, right? And depends on whether it's going on a CPU, on a GPU, and all these other things, right? And the third thing is that the content itself, there's a massive spectrum from UGC content to prime content to mixed reality content to gaming content, and again, how you handle those content types efficiently, it's a very challenging landscape, right? Yeah.
And I completely agree. When you're talking to your customers and you're working on the project, maybe 10 years ago there might have been 4 companies involved.
Yeah.
Has that grown? Has that changed now?
Yes and no. For example, if we take social media, there's probably 5 companies, not even 10, right? But if we take gaming, for example, or VOD and entertainment, it's definitely a lot more than 10. Okay. Yeah. So it depends on the industry, I guess. Yeah.
And George, I'll ask you a question. We've gone around the world now. We're going through Europe. We're going to I'm not going to say that Miami is a different world, but when you speak to your customers, what are the messages that you're hearing? What are the things that they're really passionate about?
I mean, we're a content distributor, so our customers are always asking us, where are we going to get their content next, right? So our job is always to expand distribution. And, our core distribution model, or our core business model has always been traditional linear distribution. And we work in, a small corner of the market where it's multicultural, it's US Hispanic. And for us, it's the work of convincing and working with our clients that these new digital first technologies are places where they need to be. And whether it's with existing product or creating new products or leveraging new content libraries or creating new content, that's the kind of feedback that we get from them, and that's the response, our response to them, at least from a consultative perspective. You need to be in all these different channels. You have to have presence.
So the reason why I love this particular session is I always ask the same question. 9 years, I always ask the same question, which is predictions. Now, most years we don't get to film this session, so the number of predictions that have been horribly wrong are many, and the number of predictions that have been absolutely spot on are few, and no one knows them. So I'm going to ask this panel the same question for some predictions. Now, I'm going to go this way this time, Peter, because I'm going to put you in the hot chair first. But if you had to think 5 years into the future, knowing what you do about our industry, any topic you like, give us 1 or 2 predictions that you think are likely over the next 5 years. And feel free to, don't worry about the cameras, feel free to go really out there with some crazy stuff.
I'll say it like this. 5 years ago, I actually made a prediction as well, and I made the prediction that everything Flash-based would be gone and we would all be using HTML5 and all those kind of things. It didn't really work 100%, but it worked most of it.
It's a pretty good prediction, though.
It was a pretty good prediction, and I was actually mocked for it when I made it. But right now, what I would actually see is today there's a lot of talk about doing low latency and doing a lot of dynamic stuff, and today it's all like, we want to do it, but it's too hard. In 5 years' time, if you're not doing it, there's something seriously wrong. So what I actually expect is that in 5 years' time, the user experience that we think today as, this is a dream scenario, we can't do it, we can't have instant channel change, we can't always be at the top quality, we can't have like instant feedback and super interactive experiences. In 5 years' time, all of that will definitely be true.
So you're saying Nirvana, that's your prediction?
I'm not saying Nirvana. I'm actually thinking that in 5 years' time, all of the things that we think are awesome at this point in time, all of them will be the thing that we're all just used to, and we will be looking at something which we can't even imagine yet at this point in time.
Your prediction is something we can't even imagine yet.
pretty stretchy
Yeah.
there, PJ.
Yeah. PJ got it there.
It is that everything that we're seeing now in user experience, everything that we think we can't do yet, it will be the commodity.
Yep.
And we will not be happy with it. That's what I'm saying.
I think you might be right.
I'm definitely right. Let's see in 5 years' time if I'm right.
Okay, Dave.
We'll be in 5 years, and I'll look into the camera.
Yeah.
We'll have been embarrassed at the amount of attention we gave 5G because it'll be so far behind us. We'll have flipped into a much more useful, industrial, capable 6G or some other G because 5G will be the 3G. We're not going to be talking about it. But what that means is when it becomes more industrial capable and we actually understand to have deeply deployed, extremely high bandwidth radio networks, we'll have new wearable and consumables that we can have to create content on, and the content will be richer, it'll be more augmented, it'll be more personalized. Everything my colleagues to my right have said earlier will have advanced in that time, but security will be a total shit show. It'll be out of control.
So I want to be here in 5 years to see if 5G was just a damp squib. I don't know if that translates into American, but I'm looking forward. Okay, so that is a bold prediction.
Well, I had to compete with PJ over here.
Yeah,
so,
bold
you got to go big.
Yanis.
In my opinion, in 5 to 10 years, the distinction between what is real and what is not real in content will be very difficult to make. So what you have today in Hollywood studio movies, people will be able to do on the mobile phone, stream it live, create mixed reality experience. You want to call that metaverse, you want to call it anything, right? And that creates tremendous opportunities for AI and for all of us here, but tremendous challenges, some ethical issues we need to handle carefully and so on. And it's quite interesting to see how this will play out for the younger generations and so on.
You think there'll be a bit of an ethical issue there when we can create people that are entirely digital and make them do digital stuff, and there's no actors union for digital people?
It's not only that, but you can then begin to bring people back that are no longer with us.
Yeah.
You can make people look younger. You can change appearance. You can change, and then that it's up to the stakeholders to handle, I guess.
Deep fakes are our reality.
They
It's
really
kind
are.
of what you
Exactly.
said.
Yeah, but you're right,
Pretty
but-
scary, honestly.
But they're going to be even possible to do on a very commodity device in a very, very convincing manner. And that is something we need to understand and handle, I guess.
That's a frightening prediction. Francesca.
So I tend to agree with the bandwidth possibilities, and actually was more thinking in general to infrastructures, which are already there, and we didn't explore yet all the possibility, combining all the different technologies that are there. And we are seeing some examples in Europe on the live sports, that is definitely being provided by a digital player, right? So this is definitely disrupting the industry. And with the extension of this capability, of course, you can combine a lot of more services, and definitely, in my opinion, let them be driven by the audience. So that can be the real disruption, in my opinion, in the broadcast industry.
Wow, yeah. It's great having people that have been in the industry a long time, because their predictions are like, I can kind of see that. Georgia.
I think, going off of Dave's point, I think it is kind of scary, the security aspect and the deepfake aspect of disinformation and misinformation, and trying to distinguish in between the two. That's a bit of a precarious point just for society as a whole. But what really excites me for the next 3 to 5 years is that I can sit in my house and sit in my office. Family time has already been checked off, so I do spend time with my family, but I can sit in my office and just turn on a television, regardless of what subscription or what platform it's coming from. AI is already, based on the user data or the viewership data that I've given it, is already going to dynamically create a linear experience for me based on time and date, and it's going to do the same thing for my wife, so she can watch all the wonderful programming she likes to watch, and it's going to do the same thing for my son.
We have a great panel here, and I have lots more questions, but I'd like to know if there's anyone in the audience that would like to ask a question of our group. I could ask questions with this group forever, but if there's anyone here who'd like to pose a technical question, a societal question, a metaphysical question, there's one.
So I'm a content creator, and I was particularly keyed in on the deepfake aspect. Is this something that we can self-regulate? Is this something that requires? Everybody heard the headlines today.
We haven't heard that.
Mr. Musk just decided to take matters into his own hands with respect to what he thought was government interference. But I mean, is this something that we'll be able to deal with, or is this a governmental issue?
So let's paraphrase that question, because we don't actually know what today's news was. Is this something we as an industry or as a society can self-regulate? Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so I've been working at this large trade show in Las Vegas, and it was just this little thing. Yeah, I missed that. Can we self-regulate content that's entirely virtual?
It's a tricky question,
It's
to be
a
honest.
really tricky. Thank you for that question.
The one thing that I do know for sure is that the government will be too late. I mean, today you can already make deepfakes, and they're extremely convincing as well. All the age stuff, I mean, we've seen Star Wars, we've seen Princess Leia come back to life. It is already possible, and technology is going to become broader and broader available, but I mean, if there's one thing that we've learned and that we've seen over the years, I mean, governments are always too slow. So they're not going to be able to regulate this on time. If we want to regulate this as an industry, we should also have started last year or 2 years ago, because we're also too late. So I'm actually very skeptical about this. I don't think that we will be able to self-regulate this. I think we will attempt to, and we will improve it over the next years, but there will be some mishaps in the meantime.
No chance. No chance we can self-regulate. No chance government will be able to regulate it in the next 5 years. And as a society, we will not be able to understand what is true reality versus what has been represented reality to us. And I only say that because we haven't been able to in 140 characters, we haven't been able to on the web, we haven't been able to with any other technology, so there's zero chance that we will with this new technology. It evolves too fast.
And I think there you're right. As long as there's bad actors and people with bad intentions, the regulation's going to be too late, and it's going to become a lot like a security issue, where it's going to be a game of cat and mouse. It's going to be a game of whack-a-mole. You solve one problem and it ends up popping up somewhere else. Same thing like piracy.
Yep.
Any other questions from that? That was a great question. Thank you for that. If anybody else has been purchased in the last 4 hours, do please let me know. Any questions from the audience? I have loads, but I'd love you to ask some if you fancy it. Okay, I have a couple of questions, and one of them is from an earlier panel. We talked about the notion of advertising and targeted advertising, and I'm frustrated by my experience of the modern ad-driven content realm, where I get rubbish adverts that are of no relevance to me. And as experts in your fields, do you think we'll reach a point where advertising's actually good, where it addresses the things that I want and my desires and needs, unlike today's shotgun, scattergun approach that doesn't really work? Francesca, what do you think? Do you think we're going to get to a point where advertising is good?
Well, I think we already reached a quite interesting milestone. Again, in Europe with HBB TV, one of our main customer, Mediaset, launched this product to sell advertising in overlay on the main screen during the linear stream. So this opened the opportunity to launch mini websites on the TV that audience can browse and consume, so can have a, again, personalized consumption of advertising. So I will go where I'm more interested. And this is combined with a technology that always, upon consent, can allow you to map your mobile and pair it with the television, so the broadcaster can understand when audience is exposed to an advert, to a campaign, and can collect the preference of it, so further fine-tuning the further steps of the campaign, and actually recognize, thanks to the mobile that has been paired with the television, when the people are going to the stores.
Okay.
and how much time they're spending with the stores to create a much more expanded, knowledge.
And is there evidence that this is working? Because I look at my son's generation, and they don't engage with the television, and their advertising engagement is just through YouTube, which is actually quite well targeted for that demographic, in my opinion. Do you think it's going to get better, Dave?
So I do, but in a totally different way. So with the rise of a variety of objectification engines to create the content, so whether they're Unreal engines or other engines that are out there, and with the creativity that can be done around advertisement, within the frame itself, things will be properly objectified such that new products can be overlaid within the creative process itself. And that way it can be personalized within the frame and within the storytelling itself. And because, look, the type of adverts you're getting right now are targeted towards and created and shown to you, as you said, via overlays or via links that you could click on. But when it's part of an overall creative process and you can have a different experience based upon the analytics and AI that's been collected around you versus another viewer, things get much more interesting.
Because you're quite technical, so in simple terms, that's almost like product placement, but where the product is placed digitally inside the scene, as opposed to, here's a packet of Dorito crisps, here's a packet of blue screen crisps, add crisps.
Effectively, so it's part of the creative process and storytelling.
God, I love this panel. I love this panel. Okay, any more questions from the audience? 'Cause we're getting close to our cut-off point. We've got a couple more minutes left. We got two. Ben is telling me we've got 2 more minutes left. So let's get one last run from all of you. We talked a lot about the future. Let's go back to here and now. If you were going to speak to a client and they said, look, we're really keen on doing something innovative. We want to do it now. We want to do something that we can do now to move the needle. Peter, what would you say would be like innovation today?
Let's make a lot more stuff interactive.
Interactivity.
Yes, interactivity, it's something that we can do today. Not all the creative content is there, but if we get the right people in the room, we can create an amazing experience for all of our viewers, interactive, and I mean, what are we waiting for?
Great one.
If you aren't already working in a virtual studio or having your production workflows be done virtually out of the cloud, you're behind.
Yeah, and if there was a presentation at Devon Croft around virtual studios, which I'm sure you saw, which was, again, mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing.
Now, I'll just add to that if a service doesn't optimize for mobile and low latency, it's going to lose half of the young generation customers. That's simple as that, really.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with that. My son has an attention span of 3 seconds. I read a stat recently that said if your website doesn't load in 6 seconds, 42% of consumers will leave. 6 seconds! Francesco.
Yeah, I would reiterate interactivity, definitely. That for US market, we can translate today for broadcasters with ATSC 3.0.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, it's easy.
And I think from our side of the house, we're consulting our clients because there's a lot of IP migrations that are going on as a result of 5G, and the FCC C-band repack is really rethink your distribution strategy, because that's all laying the groundwork for what we talked about before, for personalization, for regionalization, for hyper addressability down to whether it's the head end or the user or whatever it is. Yes, we all love satellite. Satellite worked for many years, but there are better technologies out there that we can leverage today, right, in order to better reach our customer.
Perfect. So we're going to finish on time. I'd like to thank our panel with a massive round of applause.